Our dream was to drive across America.
Going all the way from California to Maine on board our 35-foot ARTLAND RV.
And we had a mission.
To see the most fabulous art and architecture in the whole country.
This is Mae McCutcheon. She wanted to meet artists and curators to explore the cultural heart of the United States.
And this is Charlie Luxton. He's an English designer and he's passionate about our buildings.
Wow. Together we're bringing you the very best of what we saw on the road. This is America.
This is ARTLAND USA. And here's where ARTLAND really does go from the sublime to the ridiculous. We're taking a short journey south of Boston to Dedham, Massachusetts, and to something you wouldn't expect to find in the local movie theater. For the first time on this trip, I'm actually a little bit nervous to be walking into a museum. Why? Because I'm afraid I might like some of the work. Now, usually you find restrooms inside museums. Here, it's the other way around. Founded in 1993, the Museum of Bad Art showcases the awesomely awful and the gruesomely grim. Louise, what possessed you to open a museum of bad art?
Well, I was one of 5 people, and we found a painting that was, so bad it was good. You couldn't throw it out because it was so remarkably bad. And when we started to talk about that, we realized that if you're walking past some art galleries with a group of people and someone says, "Hey, look at that," there's a good chance that it's really terrible. And
Why is that?
Because people love bad art. And if you look around here, there are a lot of things that need to be saved and exhibited and celebrated, and that's what we do.
Okay, so what's so bad about Id and Ego of Gina?
The Id and Ego of Gina is a portrait. This is actually a portrait collection that we have up now. And what's going on here is this is somebody who's got very little idea about anatomy, but is fascinated with breasts, and that's not unusual in bad artists.
What about Drool Bunny in October? That was spelled with the German October.
Yes, Drool Bunny was submitted by the artist, and that's another thing that's really interesting. When we started this, we were surprised when we started to have artists submit their own works. And it took a while for us to figure it out, but what we understand now is that artists want people to see their work. So if they send it to us and we accept it, then they can say they're in a museum, people are seeing their works, we're acknowledging that they did something worth paying attention to. If we don't take it and send it back, they can say, well, I guess I wasn't so bad, the Museum of Bad Art turned me down.
Win-win.
Exactly.
What is it about bad art that people just are so crazy about it?
It's fun. And people, if you go into the Museum of Fine Arts, there are paintings there that you've been told are fine paintings and they're classics and they're masterpieces. And if you disagree, you're likely to be intimidated by that. Well, with our art, people can come in here and have their own opinions, come in and say, well, I don't think that's so bad. And it just frees people up. One thing that does happen is people will come in and look at our art and they'll say, well, I really like that. Well, we like it too. We think it's a different thing.
You don't want to hang it in your house.
Well, you don't necessarily want it in your house. And you can agree that it's really bad, but we like it.
This place is fantastic. I never realized that bad art could be so good.
St. Louis, Missouri, which is where we visited another of the very best collections on our 10,000-mile ARTLAND road trip across America. Now, there are times when you visit a collection when you want to look hard and long at just one work, which is what we did here at the Pulitzer Foundation. First, though, get a sense of this rather chic building by architect Tadeo Ando. Stick with me while I wander around. Now, I know I've said this before a lot of times in this series, and I don't want to sound boring, but this really is yet another great building. And the reason it's so good is that the Pulitzers had a very clear idea about the relationship they wanted to create between the viewer and the artwork. When you come in here, it feels almost domestic. You feel as though you're almost by yourself looking at these pieces of art, as though this isn't really an institution at all. And that's a very difficult thing to do. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece of work. But rather than go on about the building, and believe me, I'd love to, I'm here to look at the Richard Serra sculpture, Joe. Hey, Joe. I'm with Emily Pulitzer, who commissioned both the sculpture and the gallery. It feels quite an intimate space. Would you say it's quite an intimate foundation or establishment?
It's very intimate, and part of the thinking behind that is to give people the opportunity to see art the way they would at home.
And you're interested in creating an intimate relationship between the viewer and the artwork.
Exactly.
So you get really close to it.
We don't have labels for that reason, because at home you wouldn't have labels.
And you certainly don't need a label for this. Joe is the centerpiece of the gallery. But what inspired Serra to make such an arresting sculpture?
I asked him to do something with curves, and that's all I asked. And he then came to me at one point and said, I have some models, and this is what I would like to propose. And this is what we got.
How do other people respond to this piece?
I don't know anyone who hasn't loved it. Some people are made uncomfortable by the lack of stability they feel as they walk through the passageway where the walls keep shifting angles. With every step, it's a different shape. You think it's one shape, and then 3 steps further on, and it's something completely different.
It is exactly as Mrs. Pulitzer says. This piece of art just sucks you in, and then because the angles are constantly shifting every time you move, every step you take, it's changing. You have this feeling as though you're almost being physically manipulated, compressed and stretched. And the sky, the different cuts and shapes that it makes in the sky, quite extraordinary. And it goes on forever. Ah, here we are, right. And then, yeah, then you get this moment of release. Wonderful framed shapes above. This is an extraordinary piece of work. Really, really extraordinary.
We're at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and we're in a vault that is full to the ceiling with millions of dollars of artwork. And these works traditionally gave American women a public voice. I've come to the International Quilt Study Center, home to one of the world's largest publicly held collection of quilts. There are over 1,800 of them here. I confess that I've never really considered quilts to be artworks, but I think that I'm about to be re-educated. Wow, look at the colors. Maureen, what are we looking at here?
Oh, this is an example of just one of our collection of quilts made by African American women. This is a strip quilt. Isn't it glorious?
Now, how long would it take someone to make a quilt like this? And would it be one person? Would it be a group of people?
Very often just one person. And you know, oftentimes people say, how long did you work on this? I rarely have ever talked to a quilter or heard a quilter who really knows how long she spent on a quilt. It's something they pick up, it's something they enjoy as they do along the way. I don't think they're counting time when they do this. Now, if you ask somebody how many stitches she might have in a quilt like this, or how many different types of fabric, or how many strips are in this, then I bet the quilt maker would know that, but I don't think they watch the clock. I don't think that time is something that they're thinking about.
What's the significance of quilting in America as you see it?
Oh, gosh. So many things to so many different individuals. But one thing that has particularly struck me since I started working in this world is that for a long, long time, and you know, women didn't have a public voice. Women were in the home. They didn't necessarily write. They were not even recognized so much as artists outside of their home. But so they expressed themselves in the things that they did with their materials, with the quilts. And so this is a way that they could put their voice in their hands. They could express it through their hands in quilting and in leaving something for their family, in design, in things that were meaningful to them.
So who are today's quilters, and what do they want to say through their artwork? I'm visiting Diane Thomas, a 6th-generation quilter and member of the Omaha Quilting Group. By her own admission, she's obsessive about fabrics, design, and experimentation. And for the uninitiated, like me, it's a whole new world.
This is very much based on a traditional
Oh,
stars.
yeah.
Traditional stars. A traditional,
And these square panels?
a traditional 9-patch of 9 blocks, all equal size. It's got a crazy quilt center. It's got all kinds of tradition in it. Yet
Tell
it's
us
got,
what's Crazy Quilt?
Crazy quilt is all different sizes and shapes in one piece. So this is very much a traditionally based quilt with bright colors and contemporary look to it because of the colors and the fabrics on the quilt. This is called Hot Lava. This was made for the Nebraska State Quilt Guild raffle. It was lucky that my brother bought some tickets and he won it, and he gave it back to me for Christmas.
I was going to say, if it was for a raffle, how do you still have
Yeah,
it?
he gave it back
won
to
gave
me.
it to you. Oh, you're so
My
lucky.
mother
That's
wouldn't
nice.
let him keep it. She said he had to give it back to me. I always like to think in the older quilts and the ladies back then, a lot of people, especially on the prairie, this was their only form of color. They wouldn't have gardens. They wouldn't have, they couldn't have gardens because they couldn't afford to use the water for it. So this was their outlet. This was their beauty in their lives. So I like to think it's the same way for me, that it's the beauty in my life and what keeps me happy. My husband says I'm not happy unless I'm working on a quilt,
So many women didn't think they were creating a piece of art. They were making something that suited them. They were making something that was beautiful to them, that felt good to them, that tactily was a beautiful experience to them. And then somebody else might have come along and said, "That's art," and they might have laughed. You know, I think that has happened a lot of times. They'll say, you know, you might call it art, but I call it a quilt, and that's what it meant to me.
Quilting is undoubtedly a rich and textured art form, and I'm beginning to view these quilts and the artists who make them with a new respect. In this mammoth journey that we've taken across the country, I've been looking at a lot of art.
And I've been looking at bucket loads of amazing architecture. I've seen two of the seminal houses from the 20th century, witnessed the birth and development of the skyscraper in Chicago, and even seen a house made of dirt.
He's been living the dream.
I have. I've been living the dream. In this show, Mame and I are looking back over that dream, recalling the very best of the architecture that we visited. When I was studying architecture, there were a handful of buildings that I knew one day I had to visit. And right at the top of my wish list was the Salk Institute, a short hop in the ARTLAND bus up the coast from San Diego.
Pharrell Williams here.
Hi, I'm Joy Bryant,
I'm Eric Ripper.
I'm Tom Colicchio.
I'm Dr. Frank Lipman, the host of On the Table,
the host of Across the Board,
Host of Artist Talk.
Host of Hooked Up.
Host of the show, Be Well Week, Be Well Weekend, on the Reserve channel.
It's only on Reserve.
Did you know that you can follow my show on social media sites like Facebook?
Follow us on Twitter.
If you're a fan of my show, hit the like button.
All of the above.
Share me with your friends.
Treat yourself. Check out a new episode of my show, Hooked Up.
And if you want to leave comments, feedbacks, ideas, whatever, love to hear from you. Leave a comment.
And if you don't want to miss the show, be sure to subscribe.
The one that's like down here, or is it here? Somewhere down here.
Thanks for watching the Reserve channel.
Only on YouTube. Throw caution to the wind and ask yourself what rules.